episode 2 of the podcast. My guest today is a very special friend. I met her about 7 years ago. She has a big personality. She has a great presence, and she always has a smile. My sister from another mister, Krista Diller. She can give you a little round of applause for her quiet.
Hi.
So now you're doing summer school with all of this quarantine stuff
yeah,
going on.
It sucks.
I did not want to do summer school.
No, I didn't either. But I don't know. They were just like, "Hey, you're doing it," and I was like, "Okay, I'll take the money for it." And it's been pretty easy. I mean, it's really only been just like a couple hours a day.
That's it?
Yeah.
You gotta meet with the kids on Zoom or?
Yeah, you do like 30-minute sessions, and we have 4 groups, and I do the reading, and then Patterson does math. So we just split it, and we have it set up where it's like, if you come in at 9 to be with me, then at 9:30 you go to Patterson, then you're done. Like for the kids, you know, so it's just like 30 minutes back to back, so 1 hour.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you came to do this. You know, like I said, I have a lot of friends that are apprehensive about doing it just because it sounds so scary. You know,
It's nerve-wracking a little bit, yeah.
Sharing your story and stuff like that. Let's talk to you about, talk to me about, you know, where you grew up. Where'd you grow up at?
I grew up here in Houston on the north side.
North side?
North side.
Or the north?
The north side.
So off of 59, right?
Yeah, I mean Kingwood. North side.
That is about as far away from north side.
Yeah, no, true. I don't know, like it was very normal for a long time, like my childhood. But when I was talking to my therapist yesterday, she was like, "So how long have you had anxiety?" I'm like, "I don't know, like since I was like 8." She was like, oh. So I don't know. I say it was pretty normal. It's pretty normal for the most part. Like,
so you grew up over there in Kingwood.
Yeah.
You lived in Kingwood up until.
I was about to go into high school, and then my parents didn't like how white it was.
That's what they told y'all? They sat down and told y'all that?
Well, pretty much. They were like, well, you know, and the commute for my dad. Serious issue. No, but I mean, really, it was so freaking white. Like, every single one of our neighbors were white. Like, there were no brown people.
so
there were no brown people.
For culture.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And so we moved, like, right before I started high school. And then I went to, like, a magnet school for high school, because I didn't want to go to Kingwood High School. It was bad. It was very, like, pretentious and everything. Because they could have, like, even though I moved, they could have kept me going to, it was either Kingwood High School or the magnet school I went to. So
let's back up a little bit. So you grew up in Kingwood. So let's talk about your dad first. So your dad is from Kingwood, from Texas, from Houston. Where's he from?
Kind of. My dad grew up in Houston, but he was born in Roswell, New Mexico, and then like.
Wait, Roswell, New Mexico?
Yeah, Roswell. Like,
oh my god.
Yeah, he might have been dropped off.
I had no idea he grew up in like
he
the
could have been. Well, he was born
tinfoil hat city you could
probably
be
exactly.
born in.
Well, he only lived there for a couple years. My dad's dad, my grandpa, he was an oil and gas negotiator, so he traveled a lot, and they moved around. So most of the time he lived in Houston, but like even at some point they lived in California, and my grandpa was from Wisconsin. So like a lot of the time when I talk to people and they hear my voice, they're like, "So where are you from?" I'm like, "Houston," and they're like, "You don't sound like you're from Texas at all." So that's probably why.
You got a different type of I guess, accent. I guess I don't really hear it. Maybe some of the listeners might hear some of the accents and some of the things you're saying. But so your dad grew up there in Roswell, came over here.
Yeah.
And he came because of his dad, obviously the oil fields and stuff like that. It's the major area.
Yeah. And they settled, like, they lived in the, I guess, like what's Bel Air Memorial or whatever now. Oh, wow. But back then it wasn't.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
It was like.
It's gentrified now.
Yeah. It was just like middle class or whatever. And then, he went to UT, and we lived in Houston. I don't know, like, yeah.
Well, no, we're setting the background stuff.
Yeah.
So then your dad goes to school. He goes to law school.
Yeah.
And so, at what point did he meet your mom?
It's actually funny. They were at some party, like I think Christmas party, and he saw like this very petite, like pretty girl, and he walked up to her and he said, this was his pickup line, this is how smooth my dad is, have you ever heard of Speed Racer?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Speed racer.
Yeah, that was his pickup line. And I guess my mom was the first chick that he had met that was like, yeah, like Chim Chim and like all that. And so that was their, like, ever since then, like, and my parents been together ever since then. So, yeah. And my mom was hot stuff and my dad was not. So that was a breakthrough for men everywhere, you know, like
he made it out the zone.
Yeah. Well,
climbed the ladder.
It didn't end well for him, but you know, that's part two.
I mean, let's talk about that. So we have, you know, you've told me multiple stories about it was growing up with it was later in life that your mom kind of had this different change, right? Like you grew up with the way you described it, you had like this most wholesome housewarming mother, like baking cookies and having dinner ready at a certain time and being on a routine and schedule, and then there was just a change. Can you, I mean, take me through that kind of like when you realized like, oh man,
this is just like therapy. Like we literally talked about this yesterday. So it was weird. You know, a lot of people say, well, did you always know that your mom was an alcoholic? So just jump right into that. Yeah. I didn't know. I knew my mom always drank. She drank ever since like I could remember. So even during like all those wholesome times and stuff, where my mom was a quote unquote like good mom, I mean she was still drinking at the time. You know, once an alcoholic, always. You know, so it was always there, but it was more managed, I guess. When I was younger, and I was an only child until I was 9.5. So there was like a lot of normalcy for a long time. Or at least what I felt was normal. You know, but I knew my parents drank. Like my parents would play like quarters in the kitchen, and like I learned how to play quarters when I was really young. I wasn't drinking when I was young, for the record, but like I would have like my little bottle of or like little cup of Coke, and I'd be sitting there like chucking quarters. I'm a really good quarter player. Oh my goodness. And my parents were, you know, playing their own game on the side. But I mean, that's just how it was being an only child for, you know, a big chunk of my childhood. You know, I didn't have anybody else to hang out with. So if my parents were playing quarters, I was sitting there playing quarters. So, but I mean, I guess, you know, my parents were 20 something at the time or whatever, young 30s. They were younger, and so
they were out there.
Yeah, they're just doing like fun. Kid stuff. I mean, that's, you know, I didn't really think anything of it. Didn't really impact anything. My mom would come up to the school and do like, art masterpiece lessons and, you know, just shit like that. Like she was there for me. Like I didn't really have an issue. Then she got pregnant with my sister, and she was really, really sick during her pregnancy. And her and I were really close because my dad was always working. Like he was a young attorney, and so he was putting in a lot of hours. And, you know, so I hung out with her a lot while she laid in bed. And then my sister was born, and she just kind of stayed like that. I don't know if it was like postpartum or just depression. I don't know what it was. Because along with the alcoholism, there's like some serious mental health issues and everything there.
Well, let's pause right there. Let's go back. Let's go back. Talk about your mom. Like where's your mom from? Maybe like, is there any family history of this going on before?
My mom was adopted. So probably, I mean, I'm sure that there's some alcoholism in her genes, because that just makes sense. If you were not able to care for your kids so much that you had to give them up for adoption, there was probably some kind of issue there. So yeah, my mom was adopted. Was
she close with her adopted family?
No. This was like, my mom was born in 1962, so everybody was closed adoption back then. Like she doesn't even know who her parents were.
And even her adopted family, like, was she?
Oh, the people who adopted her. So that's a whole separate story too. My mom was adopted with one of her biological brothers, my Uncle John. They were adopted together. He was like 4 and she was 2 when they were adopted. So my grandma adopted both of them. She also adopted my Uncle Mark, who has like severe cardiac issues, like from birth. So he was also adopted, and then they had a biological son. Oh, wow. So they were 4 of them total. So it was my mom and 3 brothers. 2 of them were adopted. One was her biological, and then another one was like my grandparents' actual child.
Yes.
Birth child. So I don't really know. It's really weird because I didn't realize how many issues were there until like way later in my life. So I was like 23 when my grandma died, my mom's adoptive mom. And basically when that happened, somehow my mom and some of the brothers got cut out of any money. And I mean, it sounds bad, but I mean, it was offensive to her. And that just like broke her. That's like when her alcoholism like super took off. So she was pretty close. It seemed like they were close. And then after my grandma died, it was like, no, my mom was the worst mom ever. Da, 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 da. Like she had all these horrible things to say about her. So it's hard to answer the question whether they're close or not, because you would think they were, and then when that happened, it's like...
It sounds like she's upset with herself for not having like that closure with her.
Right. But I mean, I don't know. It's super complicated because, I don't know. She said all these things were there all along, that like my grandma was really hard on her, really tough on her, and didn't support her with anything and all this. But then it's like, well... If you don't like that, then why do you do that to me and my sister? Like, you're just passing on all of that.
I mean, it seems like a family curse. I mean, it's not until somebody, it's a generational curse. It's what they always say, until somebody has enough to withstand it and to change the momentum. I mean, it's the same thing with my family. Not learning how to handle those situations and not learning how to handle the emotions, and then you unfortunately pass that on to your kids, and it's not until somebody decides to change it, and then it does get changed. So I remember you told me one time about your dad showing up in short shorts. But that's
my gosh, that was after my sister was born.
Okay,
my dad, he would do anything to embarrass me. I've always been like very forgetful. And I've gotten much better, but I've always been very forgetful. And I kept leaving like my lunch ice pack in my locker. And my dad told me, like, if you do not bring that home tomorrow, I'm going to show up to your middle school in like my orange shorts, like these dreaded tiny little like shorts that didn't fit with holes in them and stuff. And I was like, no, I'll bring it. Well, I forgot it. So he shows up at my school and embarrassed, as if I was already like just not. So I was already so lame anyway.
He goes into, I mean, but think about the audacity of your dad to want to do that. He put the shorts on, for one. He put the shorts on. He drove to the school. He had to walk from the parking lot.
You're making me hate him even more for that.
Office. He had to sign in at the... Now that we know how a school operates, he signed in at the office in those short shorts.
My dad personally attacked me a lot of times when I was in middle school. There was another time that he came and he was standing outside, those like little windows. Like the little windows on the doors.
Oh my goodness.
He's standing outside watching me because he knew I wasn't paying attention in my science class. So he's like watching me while I was like, go away. Like, how am I supposed to pay attention with you sitting there?
So
like,
then you're sitting there at your desk looking at the door.
And middle school was just awful enough. You know what I mean? God. Like, if anybody's out there like, oh, I loved middle school, like something's wrong. You were the mean girl.
You were either the mean girl, you were either the top little athlete at the time.
You were rich, something. Like,
but there's no way. I hated middle school. Middle school was the worst, socially awkward time. You're really discovering yourself.
You hate yourself. You're just, middle school girls are just like so insecure. That's the thing. My God. You literally wake up, like, I'm telling, this is the truth. And if anybody says different, like in middle school, you literally wake up and you hate yourself and literally anybody else nearby. You just hate them. Like, if your mom walks in with the breakfast or whatever, it's like, I hate you, get out. Like, you just hate. And you don't even know why, and then you feel bad for hating people, but you don't know why. You just hate them.
And then you have that's the time where you have people that are developing at exponential rates, or like, and there are people that are not developing until way later in high school, or sometimes some people after high school, which I feel sad for.
Some people never grow, and they never. I don't know, but some people just stay short forever, and
that's also true.
Yeah.
So then, going back to your sister. So your mom, you were really close to your mom up until the point of your sister, and at that point your mom was still not off the deep end at the time, right? Like, she was.
No, I mean, it was kind of like a gradual thing. So you think like, oh, someone's just like an alcoholic, they're always walking around belligerently drunk, but that's not really true. I would say, like, if you're an alcoholic, people can drink, and people can drink like, quote unquote, too much. Yeah. But that's not the same thing as being an alcoholic. An alcoholic is somebody who literally cannot function with a job or, you know, relationships or anything because of their alcoholism. Like, that's the difference. You know, I think everybody, now that we're like in quarantine, probably drinking too much. Like,
Oh, I'm sure.
drinking during the day.
I mean,
but there's some people think like, oh my God, am I becoming an alcoholic? No, you're not. Like, if you're able to function and live your life, and she was doing that, but like the second that it was 5 o'clock socially acceptable time to start drinking, she was like belligerent drunk every night.
There was no gradual lead. It was boom,
right.
I'm drunk.
And then, you know, as we got older, as I got older, it became 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock. You know, it just kind of slowly got into where it's like you're not just waiting till 5 and not able to drive after 5. Now it's like, you know, after my sister was born and we grew up a little bit, I was 16, I could drive. I was taking her to soccer practice and dance practice and stuff because my mom was not going to drive because that would mean she couldn't drink at 3 o'clock. You know what I mean? So like I was the one, I took care of my sister a lot, backing up.
Yeah.
After my sister was born, my mom was just kind of like depressed or whatever. So, and she wasn't patient with my sister. Like, as my mom will still say when we go to family therapy, to my sister's face, you were a very difficult child. You were a very challenging child from the second you were born. And that's, even though it's true, it's unfair because wasn't her fault. Like, my sister has her own issues that she couldn't control. So I was a lot more patient with that. And
I think that helps too. Like hearing your mom express that to her daughter and seeing the pain that it caused your sister. You, like, even if it did get on your nerves, or even if it did, you knew how to suck it up because you couldn't be another person that added on to that. Like, you just couldn't do that.
I feel like, and it's like, how hard is that to just have empathy? But I guess, you know, I had empathy at 9.5, 10 years old, that like somehow I just kind of, I guess, knew that my sister couldn't help it. Yeah. And we were talking about this the other day in therapy too. Like, I do have some guilt because looking back on my childhood, I took advantage a little bit of being the good kid, to where like maybe I did start shit with my sister a couple times and it got, my parents weighed in my favor thinking, oh, but you're the good one. You could have never started shit with her. But I mean, I have some guilt for that. But
siblings don't do that.
I know,
like,
but I feel...
There's always going to be a sibling that is unfairly just treated a little bit better, whatever the reason is. But it depends on how you wield that power. For me, I was the last one. I was the baby. Before all this happened, I was the apple of my mom's eye. I could ask for anything and get anything I wanted. But I knew that at a young age. I knew that because they would have me go ask because they knew and they would tell me.
Oh, your sisters would use you as a pawn.
They would take, well, they're not going to tell you no. So I would just be like, okay, but I didn't want to utilize that for my own personal gain because I felt like it was unfair because I saw that the other two had to use me as a tool.
Right.
So it wasn't. But I understand, like, you know, you do want to utilize that in a way for your own personal gain, especially when you are parenting your sister.
Yeah. And I feel guilty about like all the times that I did do that because sometimes, you know, it was unfair retribution like on my sister. It was unfair how much trouble she got in for things that we both were wrong. And you know, I told her like last week when I was like, I feel bad about that. And she's like, oh, it's cool. Like, I get it. But I didn't know until I got much older and I was doing like child development classes and stuff that my sister's things that she was doing, she couldn't help it. Yeah. And I tried to tell my parents. I feel like they should have noticed that a lot sooner. Right. My mom just resented her for it. And I think maybe saw a little too much of my sister in her, or like her and my sister.
Oh, man.
You know, and so she just was like always just so angry and honestly instigating shit with my sister just to kind of see what would happen. And I feel guilty because I would sit back. You know, I was a kid. I was like a teenager a lot of the time, but still, like, I feel like I should have known and I should have spoken up when I'm just sitting there watching that happen. But anyway, my sister and I are very, very, very close now. And I think part of that is because we were kind of victims of the screwed up family dynamic. And
when you have such a traumatic experience at a young age, you either learn to bond with your siblings or you don't. But you bond because you're missing that parental bond, and you kind of make up for it on your own, either with your sibling or with other people that you kind of create your own family with.
Right. And we kind of joke too that like we're each other's mom. Like, you know, now that we don't really have one. Like my sister's never had a mom really. Like I've been the closest thing to a mom that she's ever had. I had a mom, but I kind of lost her. Now we are each other's mom. Like those little mothery things like that I want to say, like, and maybe it sounds bad, but like things that a girl needs from her mom, we don't have that. So we get it from each other.
Creative.
Right. And there's a name for that. It's called codependency. It's and the other thing our therapist calls it is emotional incest or something like that. It sounds bad, but that's what it is. Really it's where you're depending too much on your family members for things that you shouldn't be depending on them for. So like my sister should not be depending on me to be her mother and vice versa, but that's just what we've kind of come to. Yeah, and I mean, both of us seek mothers and people that are not our mother, like Renita.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we both do it. My sister's done it a lot of times with other people too. There's something about like you want that. You want that. Yeah, you want that so much.
It's an instinct, and
yeah.
Like going back to my mom, like she grew up in a house where it was very disconnected. Emotionally, she was taken care of. They were given the basic necessities, and they didn't have that emotional stability. And they didn't. I guess when you think about the time, nobody thinks about that in the 50s and 60s. Nobody thought about
right.
Everybody still put whiskey in their kid's mouth.
Yeah, and mental health, forget it. Yeah. Right. Like
it's just a different time era, and in a way, you can't be mad at them for it. But you also can be mad at them for not changing with the times and not progressing. Because how do you, I always refer to this quote when a man that has the same thoughts as he did 50 years ago wasted 50 years of his life. You got to progress in life. You got to grow some way. And you can't just sit back and let it pass you by.
No.
But I'm glad that you were able to make that connection, whether it's incest or not.
Yeah, it's not actually healthy, but whatever. We're working on it, but that's why I'm at least thankful for the fact, my dad is this very stoic, love my dad. He's great. He's positive impact on our life. He's the, I want to hold everything together kind of thing. And he's very, like I said, stoic and, tougher than steel is his quote for himself, that nothing can, hurt him or anything. And he even recognized that our family really, really needed therapy. And it took a lot of horrible things happening to my sister growing up, my mom. I mean, obviously my sister having not had a mother care or love for her, from the second she was born, really fucked up her life. I don't even know how she's made it to where she is, but it was just a struggle to get her to graduate from high school because she wouldn't even get out of the car. I mean, ever since my sister was little, she didn't want to go to school or do anything. She was just literally depressed her whole life. And my parents didn't want to accept that. They just wanted to say, oh, she's spoiled or she's a brat or whatever, when really it was all these things that they
it just piles up.
Couldn't grasp. Yeah. And they didn't want to accept that it was something that they just wanted to think that it was something that they could fix. And so I'm thankful that my dad kind of, after all these things that happened, recognized that and that's hard for a 60-something-year-old boomer to be oh, our family needs to go to therapy. A lot of that generation, the baby boomer generation, they're mind over matter. We can toughen up and charge through. But, this has been very helpful to all of us individually to kind of get on our own path to recover from all this trauma, lots of trauma.
I think therapy is just something that I wish that most people had access to a therapist or just somebody to, talk about their feelings. Most people don't talk about their feelings. Most people don't talk about how they're doing, their well-being, their mental health. They don't talk about those things unless there's a little bit of liquid courage around, or unless there's some other substance that they're numbing it with.
I think though, I've come to discover that getting a therapist is a lot easier than I thought. Our insurance covers it. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Our school insurance covers it. You're still going to pay as much as you would pay to go see a doctor. Mm-hmm. Your same deductible, whatever the thing is that you have to pay. It's for our shitty insurance, it's $50 every session, and that can add up. I get that. But it's if you need that, you need that, and you need to prioritize it, because I, for one, am someone who thought mind over matter too, and I could get through it. And it doesn't get better. It just gets worse as you get older, because shit gets worse as you get older.
Yeah. And if you don't learn how to cope at a young age, you are then coping with a substance or with the gripping silence. I know for my dad, like he had a lot of trauma growing up. He didn't really connect. He was one of 12 with his family. He was dyslexic, so he was the black sheep of the family. Nobody thought he was going to make anything of himself. Lo and behold, he's the only one that kind of made something of himself. He has a really good family and stuff, but nobody thought he would do anything. And he would spend his time, I remember vividly all the time, he would just spend his time outside and just talking to himself. That was his therapeutic session. He didn't talk to any of us about anything.
He talks a lot too.
Yeah, and but he would just talk and talk to himself. And I'm like, what are you doing? I remember asking him one day, and he's like, oh, I'm just talking to myself. And I thought that was the silliest of things, but that was his thing. Some people do it in writing, some people do it in music, some people do it in all these other outlets, but that was his outlet.
Yeah. And you got to do what you got to do, but I think, once you don't want to wait until things become unmanageable, because it really does affect everybody around you, and mental health and the anxiety and stuff. And it's just like one of those things where it is an illness and you can't help it. And like I said, it gets worse as you get older. And, Brad, being like the more silent opposite of me, he felt like very much it was his responsibility to help me through any of my anxiety and panic attacks and all those kinds of things, because I suffer from all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, like including my therapist, was like, you don't seem like a nervous, anxious person. And I'm like, well, no, because I don't want anybody to think that there's anything wrong. I don't want anybody to worry about me. Yeah. But then your spouse is the one behind closed doors, like with the paper bag or his thing. He looked up something about whenever someone has a panic attack, they need to have like a stimulus of like smell and taste and touch and all that. So he bought me a bag of Starburst, and every time I have a panic attack, he gives me a Starburst. He doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to do. And he's like, no, like this is my responsibility to take this on. Like I married you and all this. But I disagree. I think that men think it's their responsibility to take on all these things and fix things, but it's actually very unfair. It's very unfair for us to put all of that on somebody that doesn't know how to fix it.
I distinctly remember hearing somebody say, like, your husband is supposed to, your husband can't be your husband, your best friend. It can't be there's no way somebody can be
it's not
everything.
Fair.
It isn't fair, because then, there's going to be stories that you need to tell. You need to tell your best friend, but you may not have a best friend, so then you tell your husband. But then your husband goes to sleep thinking about those things, and that becomes his baggage that you've then thrust upon them. You may feel better, but you've also thrust that stuff upon somebody that wants to go to bed every night loving you versus worrying about you.
Exactly.
In a way,
and I hate
that
idea.
At the same time, though, we do have to be responsible for each other, not in a way where it's condemning on one more than the other, but it is in a way our responsibility too, right? Though, because we did marry you. Like, it's not like we're gonna be, you go have your panic attack, and then I'm just gonna sit here and wait.
Well, of course, but I think so it's your responsibility as a spouse to help people through things, but it's also my responsibility as a spouse to make sure that I'm doing my part to keep you from having to deal with that as much as possible. So that's why I was like, well, I appreciate that you find a responsibility in that, but it's also my responsibility to go see somebody and try to get through this, because you are not a therapist. And like you said, I can't lean on Brad to be a therapist, because anybody that knows Brad knows he can get going on any topics from like the Civil War all the way to like the pandemic, but mental health and trying to coach people through emotions, not his strong suit. No.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's I don't know. That's just something that's crazy that I think that most people don't realize when you sign up to get married, in a way, because you do sign a legal document.
Well, they ask you. I have to remind that, like, all the time. You asked me, so you proposed to me. I just said yes. I didn't ask you, so you started it.
But when you sign up for that, that's it's for sickness and health. So you got to help each other out, whether it is. But to a certain point, it is. You have to take responsibility for your own stuff. So if you're right, if you know that your spouse can't handle certain things, well, then don't set them up for failure, right?
Right.
Like, let's go find somebody that can help, whether it's a friend, whether it's a confidant, or whether it's a therapist, whoever that is.
Yeah.
So then let's go back to, let's say, middle school. Middle school, Krista.
Boo.
What was middle
Let's
school
skip
Krista
past that
like?
one. Just glide through. Oh, I was so awkward. Like, I guess like I didn't like who I was, but again, like I said earlier, who did like who they were in middle school? Like, I've always just kind of been very like bluntly honest and not a game player. I don't play games. Like, I don't manipulate. I don't play games. I'm going to tell you the way it is. Like, and so in middle school, all the little cutesy girls with all their fancy clothes from Wet Seal and whatever, like, that was not me. Like, I'm not like that. I'm very like, I'm going to wear what I want to wear, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And
So you didn't have a lot of girlfriends growing up, necessarily?
never been a gal pal type. Never.
That's probably why we get along.
Yeah, I don't, because girls want that manipulation and they want that game. And I don't have that. Like, if I don't like something or I don't want to talk to you or whatever, then like I'm not gonna talk to you. I struggle with girls a lot. They're
and
annoying.
obviously, you're not the only girl that does that. My wife is the same way. She doesn't, she's just like, I don't understand why girls do that. And I'm
It's
like,
hard.
And, for me, growing up with nothing but girls in my house, I understood as best as I could, and I'm not gonna say I understood girls more than guys, but I do, unfortunately, because that's just what I was raised with.
That's what you're around, yeah.
And I was with a lot of guys, but at the same time, I always felt this disconnect. I was like, what? I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how you're playing. You're just, that's whatever you said, that's what you meant. Like,
right.
That's how are you that simple? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Because there's always a game with these other girls.
You would think, yeah. And my thing is always like, if you say like you're fine, then you're fine. Like, if you weren't fine, you would tell me, right? Like, I don't, and even before middle school, before high school, like, my best little friend growing up was a boy. Mm-hmm. And he was like 2 years younger than me, Michael Misler. He's out there somewhere. Aww. He's got like a wife and a baby now, but we were like best friends. Like, that was my little neighborhood friend that I played with, and he lived right next door to me. We would do like obstacle courses with Matchbox cars down the slide, like. But I'm a girly girl. Like, I liked, girly things growing up, and I still do, like my nails and my hair and all that stuff. But like, as far as personalities and people that I get along with better, I just like the energy of men better because they're just a lot more fun to me. Like, more honest and just more straightforward. And I like straightforward. That's just...
You don't want to play games,
No, I hate that. So I just never really, like, any girlfriends that I had, I could never really keep them because... they would start playing those little games with me, and then my feelings would get hurt. And then I just, like, once I'm done with you, I'm done with you forever. Like, I will cut you out and you're dead to me. Like, I'm done with you. Yeah. And I have so many friends, like, that people will be like, yeah, I remember that friend, so-and-so that you had. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what's going on with her. Like, well do you ever look?
Give me an example.
Oh, God, I can give you lots. My high school friends that I had, Rachel and Jana, they were like my best friends ever. Had a falling out with them in high school, like right at the end of high school, right when we graduated. Never really spoke to them again. Don't know what they're doing. I know, like,
what was the falling out about?
Oh,
do you remember?
Actually, my mom.
Oh, God.
I worked
it all
with.
Circulates back.
I know. I worked with my friend Jana at a party store that her aunt like managed, and that's how I got the job. It was some party store over there in Humble, not like Party City, some other like no name party store. And then I was gonna leave for college, and so I put in my 2 weeks notice saying I was gonna leave, and they stopped putting me on the schedule like before the 2 weeks was up. And that was her aunt that did that, right? So it was my friend's best friend all through high school's aunt that did that. So, of course, my mom felt entitled to call her aunt and call her white trash and trailer trash and everything while she was drunk. And then Janet never wanted to talk to me again. Yeah, 3 p.m.
3 p.m. I'm plastered and I'm ready to let you have it.
Yeah, but, I didn't really know how to handle it. And high school was over, and I kind of just, didn't turn back. And they never forgave me. Thinking that I guess I felt the same way or whatever. And I made new friends in college, and then one of my new friends in college that I was friends with all through college was a roommate and everything.
Y'all were really close.
We were pretty close, yeah. It was like a group of friends. She came to my graduation party from college and started talking shit about Brad and saying that he was a dick to me and all this stuff. And I'd had some issues with her up to that point. She was very loud and outspoken, like the kind of girlfriend that you would think I would want to have. She was just very like dominating, like domineering, I guess you could say. But the second that she started talking shit about Brad, I'm like, you're done. You're out. Like, to my family. Talking shit about Brad to my family at my graduation party. I'm like,
sounds like she was more envious.
You're out. Yeah, you're out. I never speak to you again. You know? Yeah, we could go through. I have a few like that. But, like, but again, like, I give people a lot of chances. Yeah. And I've been known to be a doormat in the past. And once I'm done, though, like, after you've had, like, however many chances it is until I'm done, yeah. And then I never look back. Like, I don't look for her on Facebook. I don't care what she's doing. I don't care. See, I never look back.
I'm the same way. Like, I've always told every girl that I got with, I was like, look, if you ever do anything to break my heart, that's it. You're done. You'll be gone forever, and it'll be like I never existed in your life. Yeah. And I remember, I'll never forget, I had one girl that wanted me back so bad, she emailed me.
And you were like,
no.
Who's that?
Yeah, and I was like, no. And I was like, I guess you really wanted it, but, you know, it was just, once you've reached that limit and you hold your own self accountable for like, I'm not going to let myself be treated like that anymore. No. Because, I mean, being that doormat, you probably got a little bit of that probably from seeing your mom multiple times, like going through the stuff that she was going through and just allowing her, you know, in a way, be herself until you've kind of got fed up with it. And so yes. You probably were like, let me give her another chance. And then in a way, it goes back to, you know, letting your friends do that.
Right. I was always expected to be the calm one that put up with a lot. I was always in my family. Yeah. And so I kind of just assumed that role of being calm and laid back and a mediator and stuff. And I took a lot of shit from a lot of people. But then, you know, at the same time, like, I always wanted to turn around and give that shit to other people, too, that I knew would take it.
Because you're harboring it.
Yeah, I guess I was, because I had a boyfriend in high school that I was with for a long time, and that guy treated me so nice. Like, he was way too nice to me, and I was so mean to him. I was just, like, so mean to him. I didn't treat anybody else like that ever, but I treated him like that for whatever reason. And he's a good guy. Like, no hard feelings, I think, on either end. We just, like, I went to school and we just kind of fell out and whatever. We went on our own separate paths. But, like, I had no problem treating him like absolute shit for whatever reason. And I hate that. Like, I don't do that to Brad. Really and truly. I know everybody thinks I do, but I really don't. Like, we just, like, our relationship's just very, like, open and you know, whatever. Like, we give each other shit. But, like, I made sure that, like, I knew exactly how I messed up on that one so that I wouldn't do it again, like, when I found the right person. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, being a doormat, you have to learn not to do it. It's actually very difficult.
It is.
Because you want to resume back into those doormat
tendencies.
Yeah, and the people around you depend on you to be that doormat. Like, my whole family really depended on me. I bumped it earlier. My whole family really depended on me to be the one to just, oh, well, you're in a fight with your sister. Like, can't you just go tell her sorry? Like, God. I know you said that. My parents said that to me so much. They'd be like, why don't you just go tell her? No, she started it. She has to tell me sorry.
And that's the thing. Like, that's where I feel like I'm at right now with my family. Like, I've always been so easygoing. I mean, I've always been like that way. And I never really liked to cause issues or anything, and I just allowed myself to be mistreated, and I didn't realize that I did. I just always was like, well, okay, they're mad, I'll just say I'm sorry and move on. We get over it. And then, you know, I grow up, and I started noticing, like, people that I'm meeting, new people that I'm meeting, they would start doing the same thing, and I would allow myself to be the doormat, and then I would meet new people, and then all of a sudden I'm in the same position. I kept finding myself in that same position. So when all of this happened, and I decided to put my foot down and say no, they would look at Marissa and be like, you know what? She's the one that's causing this. And
that happened to me too. Right? They said that about Brad all the time.
So they're looking at other people saying, oh no, they're influencing him because that's not him. Well, the fact is that I decided not to be that person anymore because I wasn't gonna allow myself to be mistreated because I'm getting older. I have a family now. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. Like, there's no way I can allow my son to see me be mistreated the same way. And I'm not going to allow myself to be mistreated for my own self. Like, there's just no way. And so being that person that was always just allowed to be the doormat, I can understand their frustration of where they're at now, of like, why doesn't he just apologize? Because to this day, my parents and my family are like, you need to apologize. But I'm like, I have the recording. Do you need me to show you the recording? Like, there's no way that I'm gonna apologize when I didn't do anything wrong.
No, and you have to hold your ground on that, because
Yes.
if you don't, you know, then you're just resuming back into those tendencies.
Yes.
And like,
And it'll happen again.
that happened. I was actually telling my therapist about this yesterday. Literally the exact same thing happened to me when I met Brad. I had been going home to see my this is in college, just for the for the record. I had been going home to see my family like literally every weekend from San Marcos, because I went to Texas State. I would drive like 3 hours to go home every single weekend, because my dad, in 2010, my dad was diagnosed with bronchial tube cancer. And so, sorry, my stomach's growling.
Explain what that is.
Well, the bronchial tube is like the little airway passage that leads down to your esophagus. I think you have 2 of them. But anyway, maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But he had like a tumor in there that was lodged. He ended up getting like double pneumonia, and his lungs were collapsing. He was coughing up blood, then decided to go to the emergency room. It took him that much to go. And, you know, it turned out that that's why he had pneumonia, was because he had a tumor in his bronchial tube. So we found all that out. And, you know, for those several months, my mom was at the hospital with my dad. My sister was in middle school. Talk about a really shitty middle school life. My sister's dad had cancer when she was in middle school. Anyway, and so I was doing what I could from school, you know, trying to balance my school life. And I had a job also. I was working at Victoria's Secret. I was the top seller at Victoria's Secret at the time. And I was doing that, you know, for like money for college and everything. And I had to switch to only working weekdays and doing school and everything. And then every Friday I would come home and help out at home. Well,
so you had to start helping out a lot more. Was your mom still heavily drinking at the time? Was she still...
I don't remember.
You know, starting early? Was she already kind of hitting and missing?
I want to say, and this could be totally wrong because I just don't remember, that my mom wasn't really drinking when she was taking care of my dad. Because she literally, I mean, she does love my dad for whatever that's worth. Like, and my dad loves her. They really do love each other. Their relationship is not perfect, but they do love each other. So when that was going on, I think my mom was just entirely consumed with being there for my dad, and my dad was entirely consumed with trying to get better. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a very intense situation, and my dad is used to being the one that holds everything together. Well, he was sick, so he couldn't focus on how my sister was doing or how I was doing or whatever. So I think my sister was neglected a lot during that time. Wow. And she didn't have anybody. Apparently, as soon as I left to go to school, everything really got bad with my mom's drinking. That's when it really, really got bad, was when I left, I think, because it threw off the dynamic and, you know, made my mom feel some kind of way, I don't know, like old or empty nester or whatever. And also she lost me, and her and I had been so close, right? So I wasn't there anymore. So, you know, my sister was very much alone, and she was alone all during the week until I would come home, you know, during that time, and I would take care of everything. I would clean and cook and take care of my sister and just kind of be there for her. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know, like, it was tough. So then whenever my dad's cancer kind of got better, sorry, I haven't eaten all day, so my stomach is growling.
You want something to eat?
No, my stomach's growling. I'm sure the microphone's not picking up. No, I hope not,
sure
but it'll be like... But trying to get back to what I was saying. Oh, so then, like, after my dad, like, recovered from cancer and everything, I stopped going home as much. I had turned 21. I was living my best 21-year-old life. I was going to the square in San Marcos.
You're out in San Marcos, and you're doing your own thing at 21.
It was awesome, but then I met Brad, and that was, like, for me, that was it. I knew. Like, I knew that was it. And so what do you do when you fall in love with somebody? You want to spend every single waking second with that person. And I didn't want to come home on the weekends as much anymore. Like, I wanted to spend time with him. And so they were like, why isn't he letting you come home?
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm like, that's insulting to me, that you think I'm that stupid that I would let someone else influence whether I wanted to come home or not.
Mm-hmm.
Like he could tell me, oh, he's manipulating you. He won't let you. Are you okay? Is he hurting you? Like,
and this is all coming from your mom?
Both my parents.
Oh,
my dad
wow.
was like that too. My dad is very like, in his own way, kind of controlling because he's used to being the fixer and managing everything, you know? So, and he wanted to see me and I wasn't coming home. So you also have to think too, like it was really rough because I was the light of the family because I was able to escape all of the shit that they were dealing with Monday through Sunday or whatever. I was their little like light that could come in and I was, you know,
your little
positive.
Mary Poppins.
Kind of, because I had my own separate life free of all of that shit. So it was almost like I was an escape for them when I would come home because it wasn't all mom being an alcoholic and it wasn't all, you know, JoJo being like difficult and, you know,
And
my
your dad
dad's
trying to run around,
job and
fix it.
manage. Yeah, when I would come home, it was fun and it was great. So, so I'm not saying it really even had anything to do with me necessarily. It was just I was this element of escapism for them, and when I wasn't coming home, it was like, well, how come you're not coming home? That it made them mad. And so then they're feeding all that to my sister too. So it hurt my relationship with my sister during that time because they were saying, well, she doesn't want to come home because her new boyfriend is more important and that kind of stuff.
Did that ever create a divide between you and your sister?
Yeah, very much. And between my sister and Brad, very much too. You know, and that's hard to be that person. Like it was hard for Brad to come in and be this like person that's keeping me away from everybody.
When you meet Brad, you're like, what are you talking about?
I know, he's like the most like
laid back.
laid back. I know. So and that was really rough for a while, but you know, like it all kind of worked itself out and things kind of came to fruition. Mm-hmm. That, you know, my mom was really the one that was instigating a lot of things because of her mental illness and her alcoholism.
You know, middle school Krista is highly insecure. She's
Totally.
going about life. She has her dad coming in crazy short shorts.
Yeah. Peeking through the window and
did he do that multiple times to kind of
I don't
try
remember. My dad wanted to make sure that I wasn't being lazy because I have a lazy tendency. So
I mean that's human life.
I know.
As long as we get to a state of comfortability, we are okay. And
is that a word?
I don't know. Comfortability.
I like it, but it's
but as long as we reach that level of
the
like,
ability of being
I can
comfortable.
reach for food here. I can reach for.
Oh yeah,
here.
I love that.
I'm cold. I'm not hot. I'm not sweating. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay here.
Yeah, and
it's dangerous though.
I like to be comfortable, but I needed that little push because I wasn't like overly ambitious necessarily at that time. I didn't know that I needed to be, and so my parents pushed me to be. You know, like I got good grades and everything because I worked hard for them because my parents made me.
But it wasn't like you understood the importance.
No, hell no.
And it's like the older you get, because I feel like I'm doing that now. You know, when I had my son and I'm looking at him like, oh my God, I'm like learning different things, and I'm like, why hasn't nobody showed me this? And I'm sure they tried to show me different things and try to motivate me the same way, but how do you do that? Like parent challenge of how do you motivate the child when the child isn't motivated, but you know,
without them knowing it?
Yeah, without them knowing
exactly.
it. In a way, you unfortunately, in a way, have to manipulate them because that's just how it is.
Right.
But how do you do that? And that's a lot of parents go through that, and I'm sure a lot of parents listening go through that.
Yeah. No, my dad was definitely – so my dad was the one doing that, the peeking through the window and the pushing and the prodding. My mom was my little friend. She was more like a big sister to me. So – anything that my dad was doing on the disciplining side, my mom was undoing it, I'm sure, on the other side. You know, like if my dad grounded me from something, my mom would let me have it anyway. And I wasn't really like a bad kid or anything like that, so it didn't screw me up too badly. But you know, it probably was frustrating for my dad where he's having to be the bad guy all the time, and he probably felt like our relationship wasn't so good there for a while. And that, you know, my mom and I had this buddy-buddy relationship because my mom was letting me have and do what I wanted to. Which, again, like, I wasn't the kind of kid that was really trying to get into a lot of trouble, but I did want to be lazy, you know, and I in high school, all I wanted to do was, like, be on the computer and play Sims and be on AIM and talk to my little friends on AIM and all of that all day. But my dad is like, you have to study for your SAT. So, you know, if I was supposed to study for an hour for my SAT on my little computer program or whatever. Before I got to play Sims, my mom would just kind of say I did it, and when I didn't, like
little things
just stuff like that, so that I could be
lazy.
lazy. Yeah, and so I always knew that if I really wanted something, I could get it from my mom. And I think I always had that guilt, like you were saying, where it's like I didn't really want to do that, but I also really, really wanted to be lazy. So, like, I mean, it's hard because you're a kid. You don't have, like, that self-discipline. And you just think your parents are going to do all your disciplining for you. And
you don't have the foresight to think that far ahead, to think, like, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, even a year from now.
But some people do. Like, some people are in high school running their lives. Like, I don't know how they do that, but not me.
I remember being in high school and meeting people of all walks of life, right? You start that in high school is where you start meeting people from more, unfortunately, more tragic upbringings, where they're like, I'm 15 years old and I'm working 3 jobs because I got to, and I'm barely keeping my grades up because I got to work to take care of such and such, and then you got other people that are like, yeah, my dad's not around. I'm like, what? Like, that's when you start realizing all those other things. Were you in like any extracurricular activities for
my school didn't really offer extracurricular activities. We were like those weird kind of off kids, so like we didn't have sports, but like we all played intramural sports like every Friday.
You left Kingwood.
Yeah.
And then what high school did you end up going to? What side of town?
It's called Quest. They still have it now. They call it like college preparatory or something. But at the time,
what side of town did you end up moving to?
Well, so Kingwood's like far north, 59. My parents live in Summerwood now. That's where I lived. So if I had gone to the school I was zoned to, I would have gone to Humble High School.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You would have got a different education
At that time, now they have like 2 new high schools since then. But then I would have gone to Humble and it would have been, pretty rough. That's why my parents would have just kept me going to Kingwood High School because they would have just lied about where I lived or whatever. Because Humble, everybody knows I would have literally died in Humble. Like, I would have been eaten alive. I didn't have what it took at all.
So then you went to Quest? And then
Quest.
You said there was intramural sports?
Yeah, they did like, so very much this new wave of teaching that we're kind of getting into now where kind of like what y'all are doing with the second graders where they're rated on a scale of mastery. That's how my high school was. You got anywhere from a 0 to a 4. And you could have as many attempts as you needed to reach mastery, which was 4 was mastery. 3 was just like kind of accomplished, right? Like satisfactory or whatever.
70, I guess.
Right. So all you needed was to get 3s on everything to be able to pass. Literally everything. It didn't average out or anything. It was you had to master your skills, right? A 4 was like high level, so a 4 is like getting 100 or being in an honors class or something was like a 4. So everything that I did was very like they combined math and science together, and they called it
like STEM,
something like that, but they didn't have STEM back then. But yeah, that's how they did. Math and science were combined, and then reading, writing, and social studies were combined.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they called that exploratory foundations. So all of that stuff was combined.
A term.
Yeah, that's what they called it. And we were all separated into houses. So we had like our homeroom teacher, and within your homeroom, there were 9th graders through seniors all in one homeroom. And you stayed in that same family all the way through high school.
So you went to Hogwarts.
And I was a Hufflepuff.
Oh my goodness.
No, I mean, it was kind of like that.
That's what it sounds like.
It was awesome though, because it really it developed this sense of belonging and family. And, we all had our own little issues, as all high schoolers do. All rejects, right? We considered ourselves kind of rejects from the contemporary high school situation for whatever reason or another.
Talked to a friend or anybody I know was ever like the high school jock or like that's the typical cool guy. I don't know any of those guys.
And all those guys went to regular high schools, and we didn't have any jocks or anything at my high school. We were all like the little misfit toy kids, right? And like in our own way, even though I seemed very like normal and everything on the surface, I obviously had my own little things that kept me from wanting to go to a regular high school. Like I just felt like I'm not competitive like in that way. I'm very competitive, but not with like academics, that idea of having to compete with other kids to be ranked and all that stuff in a high school. Like I don't thrive under that. Like
I don't think a lot of people thrive under that.
No, and they didn't do that at my school. There was no rank. Like there was no ranking or anything. Literally when I was filling out college applications, I just ranked myself like 100 or whatever, like, because there was like only 60 kids in my whole graduating class. It was small and contained, and so sports were like everybody played their intramural sports. We all played it as a family. We would do like ropes activities and things like trust falls and
what?
Yeah, we did.
Oh my god, you went to such a progressive.
It
high
was
school.
really cool. It was really awesome. And then like we did. I want to call it like street hockey or whatever, but we played it inside where you don't have a puck, we have a little ball, and that was our biggest thing. Like,
wow.
That was very, very competitive.
Play houses against houses kind of thing?
Yeah, family against family.
Oh my god.
You'd have like the seniors like kind of coaching the ninth graders, but that was great because you had people older than you that had already done all these things that were confident and secure, kind of coaching these younger like ninth graders and stuff, and honing in on some of those social and even like academic skills of like how to study and just kind of showing you where you're going. You know what I mean? Like when you're a ninth grader, you're just kind of like lost.
You don't really know. And then,
yeah,
like you said, like from my experience from high school, we had just a typical high school, and you only hung out with those people. And
your clique.
Yeah, whatever the clique was, it could have been your punk clique, your rocker clique, your
jock clique,
whatever the clique was. And I just ended up unknowingly hanging out with a lot of the kids that were in the top 10. I just unknowingly, because I went to middle school with them.
Right.
And so I just kind of, when you start hanging around people that are naturally smarter than you, you just naturally push yourself to
propel. Yeah.
And so, growing up with that, like you didn't have older people teaching you how to study. Nobody teaching you or guiding you. So it sounds like you got a lot of that from those older kids because you were in a way forced to be with them, and they understood that this was a climate that was okay to do that. Right.
And just like any family, like these are people that I would talk to only under the circumstances of they're in my family. Mm-hmm. They aren't like me. They wouldn't normally be my friend, whatever, but like that's your family, and you have those people to talk to, period. Right? Like you have those people to depend on, and you're going to see them every single day. So like you can count on the fact that they're there for you. You might never talk to them outside of that room and that like time, but you always have that to go to like every day. The other thing that was cool that school did was service. We had something called service. So every Wednesday we went out and we did volunteer service. Every Wednesday, starting from freshman year all the way up into.
So we'll give me some of the stories that you've got to volunteer. Like what do you like? When I think volunteering, I think like homes for Habitat, or what?
Habitats for Humanity.
Yeah, there you go.
They had stuff like that. There were like all different kinds of volunteer opportunities, but you were supposed to try to choose something that was your passion. So that's when I went to an elementary school, and that's where I realized that was my passion, that I wanted to be a teacher. Mm-hmm. So from like 9th grade all the way until I think I did it 9th and 10th grade. And then my junior year, I kind of tried to do something else because that's what my friends were doing. And it was fun to do what your friends were doing, but I hated it. We ended up working at like a Goodwill type thing, and we were like sorting clothes. I hated that.
That sounds annoying.
But I figured out that I hated that. So that was good. Yeah. But I would, in 9th and 10th grade, when I was working with teachers, they would have me cutting things and doing laminating and stuff like that. But I also would get to work one-on-one with kids and read with kids. And I had one kid that I literally sat with him every single day and just tried to teach him how to write his name. Like pretty much the whole entire semester, like I was sitting with this one kid. I remember his name was Damien. I won't forget because I was literally D. Today we're going to work on D. I mean, and the teacher just totally cast him aside, like.
What was a different time back then?
Yeah.
You could leave a child behind.
Yeah. Well, I guess.
I don't know.
She did, but I guess her solution was to stick the little high school 9th grader on, like trying to teach him how to write his name. But I mean, in that, there's a lesson.
Still happens now.
Yeah, but you can see, like, I saw that I didn't want to be like that, and that I wanted to make a difference, So that was like that, and I think helping raise my sister, as like sad and all that stuff sounds, that I had to, raise my sister or whatever, but like those two things combined made me realize like what I was supposed to be doing. Like it's those kinds of instances in your life where you're like, oh, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And they push you into what eventually ends up being like years and years of your life. Yeah.
You always knew at a young age that you were going to be a teacher.
Pretty much. I I wasn't the kind of person that knew that I was going to be a teacher. I knew that I was passionate about kids, but it was my dad that was kind of like, what do you mean you don't know what you want to do? Like, you know what you want to do. And I was like, what? He's like, you want to be a teacher. I was like, oh, I guess. I mean, they don't make that much money. Like, I thought I wanted to make money. I thought he was like, yeah, but that's what you've always been passionate about. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I didn't connect the dots until he kind of like said something about it to me.
You know, when you're that young and you're just in, you know, you're so close to the flame, you don't realize it. It usually takes a person that's on the outside that's like, hey man, you're really good at that.
Yeah.
You know, somebody kind of nudges you in that way.
Yeah, kind of like you have a gift for this, like, kind of thing.
What made you go to Texas State? Was it to get away from your family? Was it to basically the school for education? Or is it
not the school for education? That was like the last thing on my mind. Nobody cares about that. You go to Texas State because you fall in love with it. It is the most beautiful campus that I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, it is. It's changed a lot since I started going there, but it is absolutely breathtaking. The second that you step foot on that campus and you look out and you're at the top, like at the top of all the hills and everything, like at the library and everything, and you look out and it's just like hills and buildings and hill country and stuff, like you don't want to go anywhere else, period. It's the most beautiful, like, that place to me is more beautiful than any other place that I've ever been to. Like, and I've been places. I've been to Cayman Islands and Costa Rica and all that stuff. Before anybody tries to say, like, well, have you been anywhere? Like, the hill country to me is like the most beautiful place on the entire planet, period.
Wow.
Like,
so that's really what enticed you to go to the school itself? Yeah,
I fell in love with just the area. And I liked the fact that Texas State was set in this small town. I don't like Houston. Houston's not really like it. I would not live here if I didn't absolutely have to. I have to live here for multiple reasons. But like the hill country is like, to me, that's where I should be living. That's where I'm supposed to be, but I guess it's just like not the plan right now for whatever reason. I'm hoping like someday that's where I'll end up. I don't know how long I'm going to have to wait to be there again, but
if I could change it, I would be living in a small town.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is what I know. But we love to visit our small towns, wherever they may be. And it's just something so quaint about them.
Yeah.
And you just want to live there. You just want to be there.
Yeah, except for San Marcos is not even small anymore.
No,
like, now you go back.
Bigger.
I mean, it's all just, like, meshed in with Austin. Our, like, really good friends still live over there. So sometimes we'll go see them and we'll be like, what? There's an overpass in San Marcos? Like, what happened? But I mean, at the time, that's what I wanted. Is I wanted away from Houston. I wanted to have my own life. So the idea of being away from my family at the time actually was like hard for me to grasp, but it was like the best thing that I could have done. Like, I needed to find myself and be my own person, and you know, I definitely did that there. But I love that area. I would still live there if I could. Main reason probably being like jobs is one thing, but like Brad's health and everything, it would be very difficult to like live in San Marcos.
So then, being on Brad's subject of his health, so let's talk about like what it is being married to somebody like that has what type of disease?
Mitochondrial disorder. It's called MELAS.
MELAS?
Yeah, it's basically where your mitochondria cannot carry enough oxygen to your brain. So it's almost like if he wasn't able to take the supplements that he takes, it's almost like an asphyxiation kind of thing where like you're feeling like if you've ever been like upside down or something, like not getting that oxygen to your brain, it's like that kind of thing. It's a slow thing that happens, but it happens and it can cause strokes. And that's what happened to him.
So then take me back to the first time he had a scare, I guess.
It's kind of weird because now thinking back, there were like a bunch of red flags that we saw with his health.
That's always how it is, though.
Yeah, that we didn't recognize. I mean, we went to doctors and stuff when they would come up. Like, he would get really severely dehydrated super, super easily. And that put him in the hospital a couple times. And they would just kind of pump him with fluids and send him home. And they were just like, you need to drink more water. You need to take better care of yourself, you college kid, you know, kind of thing.
Thinking that he probably just had a rough night.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and we were kind of like, okay, whatever y'all say. Like, cool. And I remember like the first time that he got really, really sick, still didn't know what it was. We were actually on our way to Wisconsin. and we went to Wisconsin Dells, and he had like rode a ton of water slides and like running up and down with the tubes, like up and down the stairs to get to the top of the slides. And he got like super, super dehydrated and sick. And we ended up in this like just me and him, not married yet, not even engaged yet at that time.
Oh, wow.
Small town hospital. My family was up at our cabin, but we were like an hour away at this super small town hospital. They had no idea like why he had something called lactic acidosis, which is almost like being septic. Your acid level is like extremely high, and it starts like basically the same thing that sepsis does. It's just like it wants to shut down your organs and everything. And so they were just pumping him with fluids again. They finally got him pumped up with enough fluids that they're like, you can go. But they said, like, when you get back home, you really need to, like, see a specialist or whatever because something's not right. You shouldn't have gotten that dehydrated like that, just that quickly. And we were like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Well,
and we carried
at the
on.
time you're what, 20?
Yeah, I think we were like, he was like 27, I think, and I was like 25. So I didn't really think anything of it.
You don't really want to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't need to go to the doctor.
Whatever,
I'm in my prime.
And he didn't even have insurance. He didn't have a job yet. He had gotten into U of H grad school for education. So he was doing that while I had just started working. I think I had been at Freeman, I think, for like a year. I'd been teaching for like a year by that time. Mm-hmm. And I want to say I might have all my stuff off. But
no,
whatever.
I remember.
I know he didn't have
the big scare was when we were on the team together still.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that was like your first year, right?
Yeah, it was.
Because that was only like my second year.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still like a baby teacher at the time. I felt so much more accomplished than you. I was so experienced in comparison to you, my one extra year. You know, you feel like
but you do
big shit.
But it's so funny though. You really do realize like just 1 year of experience just propels you so much further, and you end up having so much more tools than.
But you still don't know shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know anything. So yeah, that was like a warning, and that happened like right during that summer, like right before like the big thing happened. That was really weird. It was like the first week of school, literally the first week of school, right?
Yes.
And he had this really bad headache, and it was like I want to say it was like the second or third day of school, actually.
Yeah, it was. It was really close.
Yeah.
I think we started on a Tuesday or something that week. I remember because I thought it was such a weird time to start school.
Yeah, and he had just gotten his first job, actually. Mm-hmm. So he had just gotten hired for high school. And he had this like really bad headache, and he like got into work. He drove himself to work and everything, and told his principal, he's like, I have a really bad headache. I need to go home. I can't see right.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know what to do. So I go tell Mama Bear, and she's like, you need to leave. And I was like, I do? And she was like, yeah, you need to leave. You need to tell Mr. V you need to leave. And we'll take care of everything. And I left. Mm-hmm. And, made some appointments to try to figure out what was going on. I know we took him to the hospital at some point. They said he just had a migraine. And then the next day I took him to an eye doctor, and she said, there's nothing wrong with his eyes. It's neurological. So at that point I called his dad to come in from San Antonio. And they had said we need to take him to get an MRI. So me and his dad take him to get an MRI. And by the time we got home from doing the MRI, they were like, the doctor, the neurologist calls and is like, I wanted to call you right away. You need to get him to a hospital. Like, he's had a stroke. You need to straight admit him to the emergency room, through the emergency room, tell them, so-and-so sent you, and we'll have a room ready. Mm-hmm. And, that just like kind of sent us on a whirlwind, because I was 25, didn't think that anything bad could happen to your health when you're in your 20s.
And you just got married the year before, right?
No. We had just gotten engaged.
Just got engaged, that's what it was.
Yeah, the year before. And we were supposed to get married like in 2 months. Oh my God. So that was August. Our wedding date was October 4th. So all that's happening in August, and we were supposed to get married in 2 months. So we'd been engaged for a year. And
was that like, that's nerve-wracking for someone when you're just starting to expect to start your life, and you get this whirlwind of news, and how did you, I'm surprised you didn't shut down. I'm surprised you didn't.
Everybody
escape.
says that. I've had people like Renita included say you're one of the strongest people I know. I'm like, you have no idea what was going on inside. Because apparently I took a PTSD test from my therapist, and she said my greatest trauma, you would think it would be like my dad's cancer or my mom's alcoholism or Harvey or like any of those things. My greatest trauma is Brad getting sick, because I felt so entirely helpless from that. Like, there was nothing that I could do. And when your fiance, you're 25 and your fiance's 27, and he's looking at you with a blank stare like, I do not know who you are. I mean, he couldn't tell me from, I say he couldn't tell me from anybody. He knew who I was, but he couldn't verbalize it. So he would say, like, I love you, or he would reach out for me or whatever. And once he would say something like that or reach out to me, I would look at him and be like, do you know who I am? And he would just be like, no. Like, he couldn't tell my name. He couldn't tell his name, right? Wow. Like, there was, you know, severe, like, stuff going on that, like, we didn't understand. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know if he suffered one stroke or what, but it turned out that it's more of a state of being in a stroke for a long time, because not enough oxygen's getting to your brain. So you're constantly in a minor stroke like state, if that makes any sense.
So you have like the symptoms, like you have the symptoms and signs of a stroke, which are not necessarily having a stroke. Is that what you're saying?
Right, kind of. So like major strokes are like a complete blockage of, you know, blood and everything to your brain. That's not exactly what was going on for him.
Asphyxiating.
It's like asphyxiation kind of thing, like I'd said before, where it's more like you're slowly not getting enough air for a long enough time. It's not air, it's oxygen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but it's that's the best way that I can explain it, because it's not getting up there. And so you can't process things. So it's almost like someone who's having a seizure, like a walking seizure, you know, those silent seizures that people have. It's more like dealing with someone in a silent seizure mode, but for him it was actually like strokes.
So you're at the hospital, and while in the midst of this stroke, and he's telling you these things, and I can see why that would be the greatest, like, in a way, that would be your greatest trauma. I mean, because you know, your mom's alcoholism, she just stops drinking, it's fine. Right. Your dad, it's cancer, like, that's not something you could really change, but you knew that he could come out of that. And, like, you know, for him, it's like you just are now starting this new portion of your life. You're 25, there's the world's ahead of you, and this is what slaps you in the face.
Well, and the thing about it is, anybody that's been in love, you understand it, like, he's my world. He's my future.
Yes.
Your parents you love, of course. I love my dad. I don't want any of them to die. I don't want, like, my dad to die, of course. But I understand in the back of my head that I will outlive my father. And that's something I've always known that I will end up having to deal with in my life. But your spouse, your future spouse, your future, like the future father of your children, like the person you're supposed to grow old with, like, they're not supposed to die at 27. No. And they're not supposed to not know who you are, you know? And I was also just a little kid dealing with these grown-up behaviors.
At 25, you've had to deal with being your sibling's mom. You've had to deal with an absentee parent. You had to deal with, you know, then your spouse. So it's a lot of stuff to handle by 25. And you know, like Renita said, like, you know, I really do attest to you being really strong, for whether you see it or not. Like, that's a lot of major stuff to deal with.
Everybody says that, but I mean, you deal with what you have to. Yeah. And love gets you to do it. Yeah. You know, and like, I literally had his mom, I say his mom, Brad's mom died when she was 10, but his grandma, who's kind of like a mom and kind of like a mother-in-law to me, and his dad both saying, like, you don't need to stick through this if you don't want to. Like, you're a young woman. Wow. If you don't want to marry him anymore, nobody's going to think anything bad of you. Like, you know, if he needs to be taken care of, we'll take care of him. Like, because we didn't know if he was going to end up being a vegetable. We didn't know if he was ever going to remember who he was or not. And so at that point, I mean, anything was possible at that point, because we couldn't even diagnose what was causing it. And so it's like, I guess they were trying to make sure that I knew that I didn't have to stay if I didn't want to. And I wanted to, because I love him and I loved him. And I thought, well, you know, like, if I've got 5 years or 2 years or whatever left with him, like, we didn't know. Yeah. I was going to be there. I wasn't going to leave, and I was going to marry him, and none of that was going to change, you know? So, I mean, but being in the medical center in Houston, with doctors all around, only 2 specialists in the whole entire state of Texas on MELAS, and one of them is in the Houston Medical Center. Like, we figured it out. And we figured out what it was, especially since his mom apparently had the same thing, died when she was 49. Yeah. Passed it down. It can only be passed down from the mother to her child. So he can't pass it or anything. And but he has it. And so we kind of figured that all out through like testing and stuff, but also just the fact that his mom died when she was 49 of strokes and all these things that now he was having at 27. Like, it all kind of just made sense, you know?
So where does this go? Is his life expectancy shorter because of this? Is it?
It's hard to really know.
Medication and stuff. He's on medication now.
He's on supplements. So
Okay.
The only medication that he takes is for seizures, and the only reason why he has seizures is because of the trauma that his brain took from having stroke-like events. Then he takes a supplement called L-arginine, which actually you get at GNC. And yeah, it's just, you can get it at GNC. You used to be able to get it at HEB, but not right now. So anybody can go out and buy it. And that's what he takes to like help his mitochondria and cells and stuff carry the oxygen to his brain. And he's on a good regimen of that. We haven't had any stroke-like events or anything like that really in quite some time. Once we kind of got that nailed, like I would say probably about a year after that or so, we kind of got that nailed down on how much he should be taking. And he started seeing that specialist. He sees her like pretty regularly, like a couple times a year. And she kind of just tweaks and changes things as things go. But it sucks because it's hard to think about, because then it gets like my anxiety going. But I mean, it's just a fact.
Like I don't want to ask you it, but it's something that as a friend I've always just wanted to be curious and ask you, just because it has to be at the back of your mind. And,
always. And
the way I am, I'm always like, if I can help alleviate some of that pressure of just having a conversation, that's just how I am. So,
no, and I want people to understand it, because I know that I'm not the only person that has a spouse that has an impending doom, right? Like, I mean, it's scary. I will probably outlive him, and I would hope like how shitty my health is if I don't. But basically, the last time that I went to a doctor's appointment and I asked her, and probably this is the reason why I don't go to the doctor's appointments anymore. The specialist said, we have this regimen down, and we hope for the best, that it'll last as long as possible. Eventually, he will have another stroke or a stroke-like event. The next time that happens, it'll probably be very small. So, like, before we kind of got it down, it didn't go back to being so bad that he didn't know who I was, but it would be like, he walked around kind of feeling like he had a club foot or something, right? And then he'd have to go get an MRI done, and they'd be like, well, that's because you're having a stroke-like event. We need to up this or tweak this or change that. And so the next time that something like that happens, it'll probably be something small, like maybe a hand thing or a foot thing or whatever. And then we up the dosage, and then, we go on like that for a couple of years, and hopefully don't have anything again, and then it'll happen again. And then, we keep upping the dosage, but eventually, like, it's not going to work anymore.
Because his body's going to adapt.
Right. And he has this condition, like, it feels kind of, I think for both of us, it feels like a ticking time bomb that's going to go off at some point.
And, like, I feel like both of y'all don't want to address it either.
No, I don't want to address it because it makes me sad, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to address it because he feels, I would say he probably has some guilt that the reason why I carry a lot of anxiety and I have a lot of the issues that I do, and that I have that trauma, is in a way his fault. Because like we were literally talking about it yesterday again, like I'm still discovering all these things about myself. And anybody on the outside looking in would think my mom is causing me the most trauma. But that's because I can talk about my mom and what a shit show she is a lot freer than I can talk about, Brad's health. Because I think I can deal with my mom's shit a lot better than I can deal with the fact that, Brad has this condition that will eventually kill him. Yeah. We don't know how long it'll be, but it will someday, and that's just the way it is.
It is what it is. But, the way I always feel like you handle it is that you make every day the best day. And even though
I
you
try.
may not, yeah, even though you may not probably feel like you're doing it, I do attest just from being your friend that I think that's how you handle every day with him. And you mess with each other all the time, and
Yeah.
and I know that y'all love each other at the end of the day, and that whatever happens, you're gonna be there every step of the way. And whether he feels guilty or not, in a way, he should be fortunate that he has somebody that is willing to take this and bear this cross with him. That not every woman would. Like, when his parents and his grandma, right, gave you that outlet, there would have been a million other women that probably, I'm gone. That's it. I'm not dealing with this.
And my response to that is, then you didn't love him in the first place.
Exactly.
And because I will tell you that our wedding day was like the most definitive thing. Like, we still got married on October 4th. We didn't have to push our wedding back. Like, it was an absolute like miracle. And I had no jitters. I was the coolest, calmest bride that ever was because I was like so certain about what I was doing, because I knew exactly what I was getting myself into, and I would never.
You solidified your choice,
right? Like, I didn't feel like nervous at all, because I knew that that's what I wanted, and I think he did too. And so then it was just like a fun day. I think no matter what, like, people are nervous on their wedding day and hoping that they're making the right choice, because it is a forever decision. And I mean, that doesn't mean that you weren't supposed to get married, but you were nervous because maybe like you just had those like thoughts. But when something like that happens to you like 6 weeks before you get married, like, you aren't nervous anymore.
Yeah
Because
you know what's to come. You could have like everything laid out in front of you in a way, and you know that when the time comes, you'll be prepared.
Right.
And that's incredible. I mean, that's an incredible story you have so far. Like, just, I wanted to talk more about your mom, but I think we ended up getting a really good story out of this, and genuinely happy that I call you a friend, and that I was able to meet you at a really impressionable time in my life, being 22, 23 when I probably met you. I think I was 22 when I first started.
You were like super young.
Yeah. And so, I'm glad that I met you, and that I can have you as a friend. And so I'll leave this, and we can probably come back, and you'll come back on the show, and we'll talk more about
the people will be requesting more about my mom.
Yeah, because she's got a lot of stories about that, and that's not the path that we took, but that's okay. And so the one thing I want to leave you with is that I ask everybody that I'm going to interview is that, what's the biggest life lesson that you've learned? And
I knew exactly what I was going to say when you asked me that question. I've learned that, like, nobody gives a shit what you have going on, period. They can say that they care, and even like your friends and stuff, they do care about you on a certain level, but everybody has their own shit going on. And I learned that, like, when I was going through all these things, like, it would be very, very easy to play victim during any one of these moments, right? And I'm not going to say that I never sat around and felt sorry for myself at any point in my life, because, like, we all do that. And I'm not even going to try to compare my life and everything that I've been through to other people, because, like, I know other people have had it way worse than me. But, like, the fact of the matter is, like, do not sit around and play victim and act like you have no control over anything, because there are a ton of things that you do not have control over that suck, like your mom being an alcoholic, your dad getting cancer, like my, future husband, now husband, like, having a stroke and being in the hospital, like. And I kind of I don't know how much time we have left to that, but, like, I have a story to that.
We can go for it.
So
I don't have a time limit.
I was going through that shit, right? And I was, like, in and out of work. Like, I'm sure you remember. So
yes.
I would do, like, a day in and a day out.
Yes.
A day at the hospital with Brad, and maybe, like, 2 days in the classroom or whatever. And so I was absent a lot from work because I was literally at the hospital, like, the primary, like, caregiver for Brad, who, like, had no idea what was going on, had nobody to, he couldn't speak for himself, right? Like, he literally, like, couldn't tell anybody if he was hurting or whatever. I had to be his voice, which, of course, I had no problem doing. But anyway, so I would be out a lot. And I remember coming back one of the days that I had been out to, like, 5 voicemails on my school phone. And I had a mom that was, like, pissed at me. She was so mad because she thought it was actually the substitute, had forced her child to share crayons with another child. And why is her child having to share school supplies with another child? And I explained to her, oh, well, like I usually in my classroom, I didn't know what happened that day that I had been out, but I have community supplies of things like pencils and crayons and paper and stuff. But I guess this little girl had her own personal set of $5 crayons, right? Whatever. I don't know. Like, whatever her fancy freaking crayons were. And the mom was really upset that the substitute had forced her to share crayons with the other kid. And I simply just explained to her the community supply thing. And she's like,